by others.
Yes.
But this has not happened. But anyway, but I feel this is an important factor that should not be neglected.
Yes, of course. We move to Al Khaliji Times. Al Qaeda seizes the strategic South Yemen town, according to officials. And the battle for the Jar had killed 4 pro-government popular resistance fighters, including commander. According to security officials, Al Qaeda fighters have seized a strategic town from the pro-government forces in southern Yemen on Wednesday after the clashes that have left at least 7 people dead. And these, back and forth retakes and sort of a war between, the government, or what's remaining of the government in Yemen, Daesh, and Al Qaeda from another side, an Arab coalition headed by Saudi Arabia to, sort of get rid of the Houthi rebels, backed by Iran, as they say. It's been since March, since the Arab coalition started taking into force, and the situation is rather, getting worse in Yemen.
Well, I mean, it's already a complex situation. You have the Houthis, who are supported by Iran, who are Shia, who are at loggerheads with the Sunni elements of the government forces. In addition to which, you have Al-Qaeda, which is, after all, an extremist Sunni organization fighting the Houthis and the government. So there's a three-cornered war going on at the moment.
But there's a lot of similarities between Al-Qaeda and Daesh when it comes to their ideologies.
Yes, but they're still, they're both still
how similar or different is the situation in Libya and Yemen now?
Yemen is different. Yemen has oil, by the way, and there are earnings coming in from it, not very much.
There are parts of Libya that has also resources.
But enough to where everyone is fighting over it. And that also means that people are well supplied with weaponry, and you also have outside parties which have an interest in basically modifying the course and influencing the course of political events. It's not quite the same thing in Yemen in that respect. You have forces that would like to influence the future of Yemen, but this is in dispute at this time. Libya is different. Libya for Egypt is actually far more important, of course, it's right next door, than the situation in Yemen.
But the situation in Yemen does sort of put Saudi Arabia into a very tense situation.
Saudi Arabia has always been concerned about its south. Yemen has always been of concern to Saudi Arabia. It's concern to the Dhahran oil fields and Dhahran.
But doesn't that piece of new news about Al Qaeda taking over prove in any way that the Saudi-led Arab coalition has failed in performing its tasks for the past few months, and that rather these terrorist elements have sort of won or exceeded in their plan?
You have to look at what is the policy. Does the policy consider the Daesh and Al-Qaeda elements in Yemen to be an ally of the Sunni, by which I mean the Saudi government, or an enemy of the Saudi government, because they are certainly enemies of the Houthis? Okay, so where is it here?
Yes.
And that's why it's a complex situation.
Yeah, that's absolutely very clever, the way you put it. So, Mr. Thabet, let's move to The Guardian. And the first rough airstrikes in Syria deal a real blow to Daesh, says Michael Fallon. The British Defense Secretary did say that the air campaign, which began hours after the MPs voted overwhelmingly to act or to take action in Syria, could be lasting for 3 years. We know that there are many countries recently that decided to take action and strikes, in cooperation with Russia in some way to fight Daesh. But they said 3 years. So it's a bit hilarious, if I may put it unfortunately this way, that very strong world power forces with all the military weapons and capabilities that they have cannot defeat 30,000 extremists.
Well, I think that,
and it takes them 3 years. I mean, by 3 years, I'm sure they're going to be like hunting a lot of other cities and countries, don't you think?
Well, the thing is that in 3 years is a very long time, first of all. Secondly, that can certainly be accelerated to between 3 and 6 months if you have forces on the ground. But they
forces on the ground. But isn't that a very critical way of saying it? It's like we're putting it in front of the remaining strong Arab countries. Could possibly be Egypt, one of them, saying, well, this is our plan. If you think it's going to take too long, then let's take the other plan B, and that is putting boots on the ground. Where are they going to be putting their boots on the ground?
Well, of course, NATO. NATO, after all, is Turkey. Turkey has a massive border with Syria. If it comes to that, Turkey can certainly act
Turkey, the country that buys off petrol from
but never
Daesh
mind,
and
they are,
supports them
but
financially.
okay, but if you went to Turkey and said, right, we're going to take care of ISIS because we don't like them, and we'll help you and we'll take care of Assad as well, the Turks will be on board. And that was the whole problem with the Turks not being on board on the issue of ISIS.
I don't understand, because so Turkey is backing al-Assad's regime, but it's paying for Daesh, who doesn't want al-Assad's regime.
No, Turkey does not back al-Assad regime at all. It considers the al-Assad regime a corrosive and frankly a criminal regime. And certainly, if we look at the statistics, 250,000 people have died in the civil war so far.
Yes.
73% of those people were killed by the Syrian government. These are open-ended statistics. This is what we know. This is the reality today. So yes, they are the biggest killers of their own people at this time.
Does that mean of justifying what Daesh is doing to the Syrians?
No, it does not justify what Daesh is doing. But if we look at the opposition, the entire opposition is not Daesh. There is an opposition that is partly Daesh. Look, the only way out of this is through a political settlement. That's the reality. And the political settlement has to involve Assad walking away. Not necessarily his regime, but certainly he as an individual and those cronies immediately around him. They have to go.
But it is very clear that Iran and Hezbollah are backing that same person, that everybody else wants him to walk away.
True, but I think
so. It's not like they are finding a person who might not really give a damn, sorry if I may say, about the country as much as it's the people who are backing him who will not allow him to fall.
But is it him or the regime? If they have elements of the regime which are not going to walk away from the existing alliances they have with both Iran and Russia, they're perfectly fine that Assad goes.
Okay, we have one chance for a final article, Mr. Thabet, and we are going to move to the Gulf today. And no retaliation against the Russian sanction, vows Erdogan. According to Istanbul, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Wednesday had vowed Turkey would not retaliate against Russia's emotional sanctions imposed after the disputed down of a Russian warplane. During the past couple of days, there have been a lot of war of words between Turkey and Russia. Didn't seem to go well between both leaders when they met in Paris for the climate summit change. Russia promises that Turkey is going to pay for it. It promises it's going to be, putting sanctions on Turkey. Turkey at some point apologizes and says, no, we're not going to apologize. Very much the Erdogan style of mentality. How do you see the Russian-Turkish scenario going? And how do you see what also some analysts believe to say is the spark of a third world war starting?
No, I don't see it as a part of a Third World War. Essentially what we're looking at is a situation where the Turks basically bit off more than they could chew, I feel. They didn't have to shoot it down. They could have just easily have escorted them out, which would have made the same point. But they did shoot them down because there have been something like tens and dozens of Russian aircraft that have flown over Turkish airspace, and they're basically underlining that they don't want it to continue. And it's nothing new. The Russians have done the same sort of thing with Poland, with the Baltic republics, and with in between what they call the UK-Iceland gap, with the long-range maritime reconnaissance aircraft. So it's nothing new, but you don't just shoot it down outright. And that was therefore done to make a political statement. It's a rather reckless political statement. It's also a political...
But on what basis can a country not as strong anywhere near Russia to put itself into this, side-to-side or a confrontation? You can't be putting a political statement with a powerful country unless you're equally powerful.
I think you're looking at, this was done to address certain internal problems that Turkey has at this time. Those problems are the Kurds. Those problems are also its own constituency. Its own constituency would like to see its government doing something about what's going on in the south. So therefore shooting down the Russian aircraft, it basically addresses that. It's a reckless move, but I feel that they felt that politically they had no choice but to do that.
Yes, I'm very thankful for you, Mr. Mahmoud Thabet, political analyst, for your insight and for your fruitful information. Thank you very much for joining us on The World Today. That brings us to the end of our episode of The World Today for now. Thank you very much for watching.